third graders, welcome back. This week we're going to take a break from our usual Math Meets Literacy content to really talk about the census, and then we're also going to talk about what exactly data is and how we can use it to apply to a real world problem and a real world question all about Virginia. So for today's I can statements, our first I can statement is, I can explain what the US Census is, why it's important, and how the data obtained is used. Now, data is just a fancy word for facts, usually facts that are given to us in the form of numbers. Obtained means collected. And the US Census, some of you are like, what in the world is that, Ms. Manley? You may have heard of it on the TV. They've been talking about it a lot recently, and you may be wondering why it's even important. So for today, you are going to be watching a video to learn all about it, and that's going to give you some really important background into what it is and why we're talking about it today. Our next I can statement is, I can create a visual model of fractional data. So that's exactly what you've done this year in your third grade classroom. You're going to be using a fraction bar, it looks like a tape diagram, and you're going to create a visual representation of fractional data. Remember, visual just means it's easy for us to see with our eyes and have some ideas and have some interpretations of data just by looking at it. And then finally, you're going to be using that visual model to answer questions about the data. So let's dig right in. So to get started today, what I would like for us to dig into is just some of the vocabulary that we'll be talking about a little bit. So one, compare. That's mean looking at how things are similar, what things have in common. Contrast is the opposite. We're thinking about how things are different or how they're unlike. Data, like I mentioned earlier, data is just a fancy word for facts that are usually represented with numbers. Less than is when we're saying that one amount is smaller than another amount, and we use this less than symbol to notify or to show that something is less than. Greater than is when, greater than is when one amount is larger than another amount, and it's used, we use this symbol, the greater than symbol, to identify that. And then finally, we're going to be talking a little bit about fractions. And again, as a reminder, a fraction is just a whole that's broken down or divided into an equal number of parts. So for today, if you're able to print out our lesson handout, which you can find where you found today's video, or everything's already on Flipgrid for you, that would be really helpful to have. If you don't have that, I'm going to be sharing a copy with you on our screen, so you're welcome to follow along with me and then record your answers as we go. And then finally, as always, you'll need something to write with. Now, before we get started, what I would love for you all to do is I would like for you to watch the videos that are posted for you on your Flipgrid link. You'll also find these videos posted for you where you found today's lesson video. So go ahead and pause right here. And again, I would like for you to go back and watch the video on either Flipgrid or where you found today's link, all about the census. And when you come back, we're going to talk a little bit more about what it is. All right, if you're back here, that means either you forgot to pause or you want to chat a little bit more about the census. So in the video that you just watched, you learned that the census is really, really important. It's similar to what happens when we're in school and your teacher collects the roll, but instead of just figuring out who's present in your class or in your school, we're trying to figure out information about who's present all across the country. This information is so important. And with the census, one person in your household is going to fill it out to give information about who is living in your home. They can be babies as young as 1 day old, or even your oldest great-great-grandpa in your home. This data is so important because it helps make sure that we have exactly what we need for everyone, making sure that everyone has enough, that we have the right number of roadways, schools, teachers, hospitals. Again, this information is really important. Do you guys remember how often the census is given? If you said every 10 years, you're correct. So if it's 2020, when was the last time the census was given? So if you said 2010, you're correct. And when will it be given again? If you said 2030, you're also correct. There is an extension that means they're giving people more time to fill the census out. So make sure you ask someone in your home if they've already filled out the census. And if they haven't, encourage them to do so and talk to them a little bit more about it. All right, let's dig into our work for today. So on your handout, your first question is going to look just like mine. So it says, think about fun places to go in the state where you live. How many amusement parks do you think are in our state in Virginia in 2017? Circle one of the sentences to answer the question. So do you think there's between 0 and 7, 8 and 20, or more than 20? Let's see if we're correct. So question number 2 says, fill out your sentence stem to show how many amusement parks were in your state in 2017. So right here, we're going to look at this data, and this data is also posted for you on Flipgrid to make it a little bit easier to see. But you're going to see there are 4 columns. The first column lists the state name, and it's in alphabetical order. You're going to see the next column identifies states that have between 0 and 7 amusement parks. Our next column identifies states that have between 8 and 20. And then the final has the number of states that are greater than 20. You'll also see that there's an X that's listed next to each state. So this X says how many amusement parks that state has. So for example, if I look at Nevada right here, it has an X in this column for between 0 and 7. So I know Nevada has between 0 and 7. Go ahead and look at Virginia, and I want you to figure out, where does Virginia fall? How many amusement parks does Virginia have? So I found Virginia, and it looks like they have between 8 and 20. So were you correct? Go ahead and record your response now. Now what we're going to do is we're going to try and figure out what fractions of states fall within each of those columns. So you're going to see here, there's already a fraction written. You're going to see that the denominator, the number of parts we're working with, is 50. Do you have any ideas for why that could be the case? If you said because there are 50 states, you're correct. So it says, out of the 50 states, what fraction have between 0 and 7 amusement parks? To answer this question, you're going to use your chart that we just looked at to count the number of states that had an X in the column 0 through 7, and you're going to record that as our numerator, the number of states. So I'm going to go back to our chart, and right now, I want you to go ahead and count how many states have an X in the column between 0 and 70. Do that now. All right, do you have your answer? If you said 30, you're correct. There are 30 out of 50 states that have between 0 and 7 amusement parks. Now we're going to do the same thing, but we're going to look at the fraction of states that have between 8 and 20 amusement parks. So using the same chart, I want you to go ahead and pause your screen and count how many states had an X in this column. If you said 14, you are correct. Finally, we're going to do the exact same work, and we're going to think about how many states had more than 20 amusement parks in 2017. Go ahead and pause your screen here and count how many states have more than 20 amusement parks. If you said 6, you're correct. Some of you also may have been thinking that there were 30 states that had between 0 and 7. There were 14 states that had between 8 and 20, and so you knew that there were only 6 states left out of the 50. So if you came up with your answer that way to go, pat yourself on the back, because that is fantastic, brilliant thinking. All right, now what we're going to do is we're going to shade in our chart, and we're going to create a visual model for this fractional relationship that we've been talking about. So it says, the chart below is divided into 50 equal parts, and each part stands for or represents one of the 50 states. Use the fractions you counted from questions 4, 5, and 6 to fill in this chart using 3 colors. Each color should show the fraction of states that have 0 to 7. So remember that was 30 out of 50 states. 8 and 20, that was 14 out of 50. And greater than 20, that was 6 out of 50. So remember, this is just showing us a fractional model. So I have a total of 50 parts that make up this whole that we're working with. And I know each of these parts represents a state. So if for 0 through 7, if we know that 30 out of 50 states have that many parks, how many parts do you think we should shade in? If you said 30, you're correct. We're going to keep that pattern going. So we're going to pick one color to show the 30 states that have between 0 and 7, another color to show the 14 that are between 8 and 20, and another color to show the number of parks that have more than 20. And you're going to label the color that you use in this key at the bottom to help people see and help people easily identify what you've modeled. So your chart should look something like mine once you finish. So I can easily look at this and I can tell some really important information. This to me is a really easy, because I can just look at it and right away I can already tell so much. Let's answer some questions. So the first says, compare the fraction of states that have between 0 and 7 amusement parks with a fraction of states that have greater than 20, using a comparison symbol. So what do you notice? So I had 30 out of 50 that had 0 and 7. And then I had 6 out of 50 that were greater than 20. So these are the two fractions that I'm working with. What comparison symbol would you use? Go ahead and label that now. If you use the greater than symbol, you're correct. 30 out of 50 states is more than 6 states. Go ahead and write down your response for what your comparison means. Here's mine for an example. Now, I'd like for you to explain your answer to question 8 using your chart. So looking at this chart, how could you explain how you knew that 30 out of 50 states was greater than the number of states that have more than 20? How could you have done that just by looking at it? Go ahead and record your response now. Here's an example of my response. I said that more parts, 30 out of 50, are colored in for the states with between 0 and 7 amusement parks, and fewer parts are colored in for states with more than 20. If yours looks a little bit different from mine, that's totally fine. Now, what's the fraction of the states that have between 0 and 7 amusement parks plus the fraction of states that have between 8 and 20 amusement parks? Write a number sentence to show your work. Remember, a number sentence sounds kind of like this. Something plus something equals something. So think about what you're going to be adding together. This is a really advanced question for you guys. So I had 30 out of 50 had between 0 and 7 plus 14 out of 50. So how many total states out of 50 states was that? Go ahead and pause your screen to work, but if you're ready to see your answer, you can keep listening. All right, did you have 30 out of 50 plus 14 out of 50 equals 44 out of 50? If so, you are correct. Our reflection question for you to answer on Flipgrid today is posted right here. So using the data that we've talked about today, if you were in charge of getting to build a new amusement park anywhere in the United States you wanted to, where would you build it and why? How could you use the data from the chart to help you make your decision? You can use your link right here to share your response with us on Flipgrid. You'll also find some more videos and games, as well as another chart that's posted for you on the Flipgrid there. We can't wait to see your work. Until next time.